My name is Nico Moscoso, and I'm an out boss.
Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. And I am super thrilled to be interviewing my friend and our first astrologer on the show, Nico Moscoso, who is joining us all the way from Seattle, Washington. So welcome to the show, Nico. Are you ready to inspire fellow Out Bosses?
I'll see what I can do. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to talk to you again.
I know. Yeah. This is really great. And no doubt that you will. So just a little bit about Nico. He is an astrologer and tarot card reader, and he founded Scarlet and Integrative Mysticism 5 years ago. You're coming up on your 5-year anniversary, so congratulations. That's huge for any entrepreneur. So let's revel in that. Yay.
Yay.
So to kick us off, tell us a little bit more about what you do and what makes your business unique.
Well, one of the things that I do is, yes, I do provide horoscopes and all that good stuff, doing future predictions and whatnot. But what a lot of people don't know about astrology and tarot is that it's actually a lot more of a popular form of consulting than a lot of people would actually assume, in the mainstream. We go into more, secular mainstream. And I've actually worked with a lot of people who are looking for advice, looking to forecast, whether it's future when it comes to their investments, looking at industry mapping and say astrology charts, looking at helping them find certain tools or, plug into, who's who and what's what when it comes to helping find your staff or maybe a romantic partner, certain times to execute big plans in their life. And so it's almost like being a spiritual consultant, but you're actually doing more of the consultant type of work than anything else. And again, your tools, instead of maybe X, Y, and Z, you're using your astrology and your tarot. And I also do a lot of work trying to educate more on the topic of how, I guess you could say, spiritual practice, spiritual energy does affect everything that we do. So there's also, definitely more of a developmental and, educational side of it as well. Trying to help people understand a little bit more about, what we hold, what we carry, and what we project does change the experience that we have in this reality, helping people to understand that we are here co-creating, that just as much as this has power over our reality, we have power over our reality, and we're all in this together. And we're all co-creating at the same time. And these external forces are there to be considered, whether they're helping or whether they need tweaking. It's helping people kind of navigate that weather.
I'm really glad that you brought up this concept of co-creating. And I think that's really valuable for any person in the context of this show for business owners, right? I mean, we wake up every day and we look at the weather forecast, right, to determine what we're going to be wearing and how to adjust to the weather. And I think what you're talking about is also understanding we're on planet Earth and it is in relationship to lots of other planets. And so there's kind of this astrological forecast that I think is valuable. I'm a little woo, so there's that. But I think it's absolutely valuable for people in business to kind of just be aware of, different energy that's out there that can impact decisions that we make, right? And so how do you, for the skeptics who might be listening of like, oh, astrology, like what does that have to do with business? Like what would you say to the doubters? Or have you ever worked with a client who may have been prompted by a friend to get a reading and then was just like, wow, this is actually, you're right on and this is helping me in my business? Like, what are some things that you often say to those folks?
I don't really say anything to those folks. I mean, they have a right to believe and look at the world in the way they choose, as with anything, the same thing can be said with stock predictions or the housing market predictions. The proof is always going to be in the pudding. I don't think that it helps to hype up either astrology or tarot to make it look like it's the bee's knees if the proof is in the pudding. We do have all of these coaches and these consultants and these brokers going out and putting out a bunch of hype. I don't do the I told you so thing. And if somebody is sort of strong armed into coming to me, which it's happened before, I don't really feel comfortable with that either. I'm like, well, this person is not happy here. Like, why did your boyfriend buy this for you? And he's sitting there, and I've had a phone call like that recently where he's just like, my boyfriend thought this would be a good Christmas present. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What I do is I just make it a point of saying, well, look, this is going to be talking about, again, I guess you could say the sum of the parts creating these circumstances around you. So I'm going to focus more on the timing, more on the predictions, what's going to go on here, when you're going to have your opportunity to do this. It looks like you're going to be moving this year. He's like, we were actually going to be moving this year. And I'm like, okay, so you already set your intention out here. I'll tell you when it's most likely going to happen, when you're going to find the apartment for you and your boyfriend to move into. August, going into a little bit of just what happened in that reading. And sometimes you'll have to talk a little bit about the past to kind of check in with them to be like, look, this will tell us a little bit about your past as well. I just noticed you changed jobs in October. And he's like, yeah, just about a week before Halloween. So you have to look back and you got to help them into it. But my way of doing it is trying to be as down to earth as possible. Don't be an evangelist. Don't try and make it about you. My ego isn't set in converting people. To go even deeper, I do identify as a witch. And, when it comes to being a witch, it's kind of like we're not out there to convert people. Hell, there are some people we'd say, this ain't right for you.
Yeah.
So it's about respecting everybody where they are and not trying to drag them up or down, or, you show them what you can do, but the proof is always going to be in the pudding, like any other kind of forecast.
Yeah. Absolutely. I really like that response. So thank you for breaking that down. So you're online, you have a YouTube channel, you make a lot of offerings for your readings available around the world, basically anyone who wants to work with you. There's a lot of opportunity in that. And I'm just curious right now, you've been in business for 5 years. What has you most inspired, today? What's the one thing where you're like, you wake up every day and you're like, yes, I'm so glad that this is happening. What is that one thing?
I would say that one thing has to do with seeing people actually get the confidence to know that there is no one time for anything in life. Sometimes you go on as a reader, you go on as an astrologer, and the realm of this kind of spiritual consulting work is saturated with two halves. Well, there's more parts than two halves. There's more of the, again, the coaching, more personal development, self-work kind of side, which is good. Those tools are necessary. And then there's the predictive side of things. And I kind of fall more into the latter. It's not that I can't do the help, the personal development kind of stuff, but I tend to like the predictive side more. I like getting people back on track with realizing that you never have something just once. Sometimes you do have people who come in and, I'll never have the career I wanted again. I'll never have a job as good as that again. I'll never have a romantic partner like that again. The truth about astrology is that I'm going to say 99% of everything comes back around within, 4 or 5 years. There's always a chance to get something back on track or to get that experience back. And so helping people away from cynicism, getting people away from that jaded kind of thought form is very important to me. But also, again, helping people wake up to the idea that if they just let themselves actually, for a minute, you don't have to not believe it after you walk away from the session, for just for a minute, see how powerful you really are. Somewhere subconsciously, you're going to act like that powerful person. One of the things I like to do, though, is remind myself, though, is I'm not a part of the other side of it. A lot of people think astrology, they either think the crazy witch in the woods, which is me with my cats, or they think, the guru in the penthouse, in New York or something like that. And I'm not that person. And I'm actually proud to be a counterbalance to that voice, not because I don't agree with that person or that lifestyle, but because I also know that personally for myself, I don't do well with cheerleaders. Nobody really sinks in with me when they're like, you're doing such a great job, go you, power to you, and all this kind of stuff. Like I'm the kind of person where that doesn't really sink in. Like I need things to be a bit more solid. I was kind of a, Daria Morgendorfer in high school. So I need to have that very, very staunch, bordering, on maybe a bit too dark realism. And I think that a lot of people who resonate with that communication style are the people that I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
You can handle that. The people who are kind of like, look, I want to get in there. I want to deal with, I don't need more. I just need someone to give me a roadmap, and so I'm proud to have a space for those folks who might not necessarily resonate 100% with something super, super spiritual, or something that's a bit more on the new age side of things.
Yeah. Just pop culture reference. So anyone who is listening to the show who is wondering, who is Daria Morgendorffer? I didn't even know her last name. Daria was a show on MTV. Probably resonates with more Gen Xers. I love the show. So I think thanks for that reference. You can probably Google it and find it on YouTube. And also, I like what you're saying. So you're most excited in your business of kind of looking more at the predictive side when you're working with clients, right? So, and I love that you're identifying as a witch. So talk about being your authentic self. That's great. Yeah. I'm curious on that. I'm assuming that actually, I'm not sure how your business is structured. So I guess for clarity, for folks who are listening, are you working as a solopreneur, or do you work do you have a team of maybe like contractors who help out with some of the outwardly facing stuff that you do online? Like, what does your business structure look like? If you can kind of just tell us a little bit about the day in the life of an astrologer, I think that would be helpful for our audience.
For myself, I'm actually solo.
Yeah.
Completely solo, 100% solo.
Okay.
When I first started out, I had a friend who was in film school who was helping me when it came to, he was also teaching me how to edit and, do all these things for my videos and whatnot. But, he went his way. He started working on bigger projects, and I went my way, and I learned the tools so I could do it myself. So from about late 2013, early 2014 on, I've been completely solo. And I've partnered up with people in the past, but those are more like collaborations with other content creators. I don't have, say, a crew.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, because I usually ask a question around like being your authentic self and like ways that, whether you're working in collaboration with other, as you said, content creators or folks in the past, like what has been like something that you do in your business to really signal to people who often feel left out of kind of corporate workplace culture that they fit in with integrative mysticism and Scarlet Moon? Is that something that you think about like actively, like the kind of culture that you're creating, the type of, I'm sure you think about your ideal clients. Like, how do you put out a message that I want to work with people who may not feel comfortable working with other astrologers? Or is that something that you're actively thinking about? And if so, what are some things that you do to send that signal?
Yes. Let's just start with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I do think about that. That. And, it's funny. We'll get there. You know me, I tend to circle around. The way I was actually thinking about how I would talk about something else, and it actually relates to this very much, because I was looking on your prompt when you emailed me and everything. We were talking about, well, how do you work with your LGBTQ identity when it comes to your work? And I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah.
And being gay myself, I had to think, well, how do I do that? And then it actually ties into the answer to this question. And how do I connect to people who don't connect? Well, the truth is, sometimes you don't decide when somebody connects. You don't decide when somebody is suddenly interested in your work. I've had plenty of people, all walks of life, yes, all parts of the world, all different orientations and gender identities and everything, and even just different religions, different spiritual paths. I've had staunch there's nothing atheists. I've had people who are Christians who were, scared to talk to a priest. I think that for me, the way I help people come into comfort with looking at that is kind of seeing that once we drop all of this external identity, and to me, I look at, say, my heritage, my ethnic heritage, and my orientation as an external identity. To a degree, it's not on the surface, it's not the skin, it's not the clothes, but it's probably it's the muscle and meat and tissue underneath. Mm-hmm. It's lovely imagery. The way it works to me is helping people to kind of get those walls torn down. It's kind of like, and I'm not this is not a good equation at all, but it's the first thing that popped into my head. It's kind of like when you have a huge event in a community. Let's say, God forbid, there's an earthquake or something, or a flood. Something clicks. Insane people that tears down those walls. Suddenly, I'm not rich or poor. I'm not Christian. I'm not a witch. I'm not atheist. I'm not gay. I'm not straight. I'm not trans. I'm not bi. I'm my soul. And I'm bearing my soul because something for that hour or that week has stripped that all away. Now I really get to be my authentic self. Now I don't have to pretend or learn to try to assimilate to a culture, whether it's mine and my identity or somebody else's. And one could easily apply that psychology and that mentality to, say, the corporate world or the world of entrepreneurship very easily. Very easily, because there are these little cultural agreements, right?
Yeah.
We're all in these cultural agreements together. And some of us didn't make those agreements, as out people. We can all agree that we didn't agree to a lot of cultural agreements.
Yeah.
And you have to have sympathy and empathy for people who you can see in that moment are doing the exact same thing you did. When you had to abide by a cultural agreement that wasn't yours, either that because it's the town you grew up in, the school you went to, the family that you had. And a lot of people are going to go through that experience in their own fashion, in the business world and in the spiritual world. So I think that we, as LGBTQ people, have an advantage. We have an advantage to be able to spot that. And to me, I always talk a lot about identity and self-identification, and over-identification is a big problem. So I try and get people away from those things. Stop propping up your political wing just for a damn second. Tell me about you.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. I don't care if you're LGBTQ. Tell me about you. Okay? I'm the type of person who's like, look, I'm all about everyone embracing your authentic selves. And sometimes that means we have to look and see. I had this talk with somebody the other day. Like, I agree. We talk about things like heteronormativity. I think heteronormativity as a cultural pressure is just as damaging to straight people as it is to LGBTQ people. But I also got to say that I don't resonate with what is considered to be, I guess you could say, popular homonormativity either. Mm-hmm. But if I say that out loud, someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah. I want to jump in just for a second, because I think what you're talking about, I love this concept of cultural agreements, and some people are active in making, these norms, cultural norms, and others, like you said, we have to abide by them. And I think that's something really unique. And you're the first person to really bring up that phrase, using that phrase. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's super helpful. We're going to kind of dive into some of the superpowers that you're about to talk about LGBT people having an advantage. So I'm going to pause just for a moment. And I want to kind of go back and capture your origin story. So in the bio, 5 years, you're celebrating 5 years of working on your own, having your own business, coming up with your own cultural agreements of what Scarlet Moon and Integrative Mysticism stand for. But take us to that moment where you decided, I'm me, I'm starting my own business, and this is what it is. Like, where were you at 5 years ago? Were you working for someone else?
Yes.
And if so, like, what was the calculus? Like, did you feel like you didn't fit into those cultural agreements, or was it something else that was a motivator for you to start your business?
Well, this had always been I guess you could say, a dream for some time. I could probably go back to 2008 and think about when I wanted to actually start going into business for myself. And funny enough, it had nothing to do with what Scarlet Moon or Integrative Mysticism is now. Back then, I just, again, being the little cat lady that I am, wanted to have my own magic shop out in in some small town somewhere, something like you'd see in like Practical Magic. I know I'm making all these late 90s references. I kind of set myself on that path. And in 2008, I was working as a waiter and a bartender. In 2008, I would have been 23, so a little young to be going out and trying to open a brick and mortar store with no background education in business, no anything, right? Yeah. But from about 2008, I had been trying to find ways to think about doing it. I made friends at a couple of shops, a couple of holistic shops and metaphysical shops in North Seattle. and further north of Seattle for that matter. I was already well on my path. I've been practicing witchcraft since, the late 90s. So I actually just had my 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
In 2017 of practicing that. And, I think that basically puts me, well into, fairly experienced there. So that the training when it comes to that is, is good to go. But with business at the time, I was trying to open up a brick and mortar store. That was my ideal. And, in 2008, I hadn't even thought of YouTube. I don't think I even watched YouTube. I had tried several times to get myself into that world in different ways, making different products, little oils and essential oil products and all kinds of things like that, candles, to maybe have some consignment deals, and sell some things, just get my foot in the door somewhere. Yeah. And that went on for a good chunk of time. And then in 2012, 2013, my life kind of took a huge, huge turn. And somebody I knew had died.
I'm sorry.
And then a month later, one of my cats was diagnosed with inoperable squamous cell carcinoma cancer. Wow. And actually, it was the 4-year anniversary of her passing on the 7th of this month. And so I kind of went into that downward spiral. Mm-hmm. But I already had sort of like a hobby thing going on YouTube. My friend, the one who was teaching me about the editing, had already got me thinking about doing things. But I didn't get the YouTube check. I didn't become a YouTube partner. I still was working a regular job, and until we get into 2013. And then September of 2013, Scarlet Moon had become this monstrosity. It's like you gain all these subscribers really, really fast, and you find out it's turning into a 40-hour work week. You're actually making the money you need. In September 2013, I decided, okay, here we go. Let's go get the business license with Washington State. Let's go and turn this into a real thing. Quit my job right after my birthday. The rest is history. So it had nothing to do with building up a plan. I mean, that's the thing. And if that's the message I'd like to send to people, sometimes, because let's face it, we know a lot of artists. We know a lot of people who are artists. Mm-hmm. If you love the thing you're doing more than the money you're trying to make, you can still do it. You do have to have discipline, though. There's no point in time where you can say, I'm tired, or I'm distracted, or I'm depressed, or I'm horny, or I'm hungry, or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can't obviously be a sensualist about it. You have to be dedicated to your work. I treat it more like a martial art than I do a business. But yeah, that's kind of what happened.
I think that's I think that's a great analogy of treating this like a martial art entrepreneurship. And, just a couple of things that I pulled out of what you just shared is that, this idea of starting was something that you dreamed up, starting in 2008. And what was that? The math there. You started in officially full-time 2013, right? So 5 years after that, it was like, that's what it took to kind of manifest this concept of you knew you wanted to be your own boss, and and you started to get signals. And the very cool thing about online is you can kind of get that social proof, or the proof of concept, I guess, from, hey, I have a YouTube channel, I'm sharing what I know, and all of a sudden, like you said, the subscribers start popping up, and you're like, whoa, there's an audience here. People really like what I have to say. And I just thank you for kind of walking us through that, because there's a lot of people who do listen to the show where they haven't quite made the shift from employee to entrepreneur. And, obviously there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of, how can I make this work? And I really liked what you said, where it's like, you're honing in on your craft, what you love, what lights you up, and kind of planning around that, right? Like building the business around that, rather than, I want to make, some people are motivated by the money of like, I want to make X amount every year, right? But, how are you doing that? And I like that you center your business around your passion and what you're good at. And it's very clear, like that has brought so much success to you. So thanks for walking through that origin story. I think that that's definitely helpful for the audience that tunes into the show. Okay, so now we're going to pivot and talk about your LGBT identity as it pops up in your business. And there's a couple of general questions that I like to just kind of throw out there. And the first is just, and maybe this has been your experience or not, but I encourage you to kind of dig a little bit here, because part of the fear for out entrepreneurs or those people who want to be out in their businesses is how to negotiate, being truly authentic as LGBT, in your case, like being LGBT, identifying as a witch, being a witch, right? And getting clients, right? Or customers or people to support your business. And so I'm curious if you could think of a time, over these past 5 years where, you're working with prospective clients, ideal clients, returning clients, and something about your sexual orientation popped up and, a client wasn't so supportive or great, or maybe they stopped, being a client. Can you think of something specific where, your LGBT identity, you may have paused with disclosing or coming out, and how did you work around it? Because your story, the more specific you can get, can really help other folks just negotiate being more authentic in the work that they do.
Well, I am having a hard time with that, to find a spot.
Sure.
And I think that if you don't mind, I think, Rhodes, we need to acknowledge our privilege, though. I live in Seattle, you live in Portland.
Yep. Yes.
We're a little built up in a way that's different. These are both very, very LGBT friendly communities.
Yes.
Didn't mean to drop the cue, everyone. But the these are very, very, everywhere is going to have its problems, but it is easier for us to fight back. Mm-hmm. Because we've got that confidence built up, that buffer built up. You want to come to me, okay, F you, that kind of thing. We've got that.
Yes.
So, to be honest, I think I'm actually protected by my own body of work. Mm-hmm. I've never, not once, been out. I've mentioned being gay, liking men, even in the most casual of videos and horoscopes. So so I take for granted people already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never really had to shield myself from anything like that. And every opportunity I've had to collaborate with people and things like that, they've all been, very, not just very accepting, but, it's just supportive. It's just created a bit of reality. If anything, I can talk about being a witch being a problem for some people. And maybe this is a good example, or perhaps, if we are looking for a story, let's talk about being a witch in modern New Age culture. It's not as easy. It's not as easy as you'd think. The way I would equate it, what I would equate it to, is kind of that in between, am I a part of either community kind of feel that a lot of my bisexual friends sometimes deal with, when it comes to dealing with heteronormative cultural agreements and homonormative cultural agreements. Because with the New Age community, you've got this focus on spiritual practice, yes, and, you've got a lot of people working with, the metaphysical just as much as a witch is. But if a person's cultural conditioning still has them respond to the idea of a witch or what it is the same way they did when they were abiding by, say, their more conservative Christian upbringings, their more, dare I say, nihilistic atheist upbringings, mm-hmm. their more whatever upbringings, that's going to come up and out, and that is something that's tough to navigate every once in a while.
Yeah,
because no matter how love and light and tolerant a person can be, if they have still embraced that conditioning to have a problem with the word witch or whatever, it's kind of like, say, a bisexual person suddenly being treated like they're gay because they have a partner of the same gender, or they're suddenly no longer LGBTQ, they're no longer B because they have a partner of the opposite gender, right? So it's kind of that interesting navigation. And to me, what it's been is, my advice to everyone is, for the love of God, the right customer, the right client, the right collaborator isn't anybody. It's not anybody. You don't go out of your way to try and resonate with anybody and everybody under the sun. Don't try and do that. What I do is, like, have I had to hide it? No. Do I go through the back of my head and be like, this person's probably not going to come back? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it really come up that way? Yeah. The only reason it comes up that way and it's got to be relevant to the conversation, is because they might be asking questions that I can answer with that information.
Yeah.
You know?
I like what you're saying here. And it's like, maybe it's by nature. I mean, you live in Seattle, your business is largely online, right? People find you through your YouTube channel and they work with you virtually in a lot of cases. And so just by doing that, I really like, and I would just want to underscore this for people tuning in, is you're putting out, I mean, whether it's a frequency, a message, whatever you want to call it, you're putting out this energy and the right people are coming to you. I mean, that's a funny story, backstory. It's like how we met is I was tuning into your YouTube channels because I'm like, what's happening with Virgos? And I found your online horoscopes and I was like, oh, I like this guy. And it was like, maybe 10 videos in, you talked about something about being gay. And I was like, whoa, it's like an added bonus. Like I want to work with this guy, So yeah. You're attracting your dream clients just by virtue of being yourself. And I think like if there's a takeaway, even though this was like the tough question of, how do you get around being out in your business, you just are. You started that way, and that's maybe the power of the online business is that there's your persona, your brand, your message, and the right people are gravitating towards it. And yeah, you're probably your energy is turning off some people, but you wouldn't want to work with those people anyway, right? And I think it leads to the next question. And you kind of got into this in the beginning of the interview, talking about kind of the superpowers of LGBT people. When it comes to business, for the out entrepreneur, those people who want to be more out and authentic in their work, what are some of the things that you think in the world of business allow you to stand out because of your own experiences of coming out to your family, of just living in the world of, as you say, the cultural agreements of heteronormativity or gender normativity, whatever, like that has allowed you to be like shaped by the fire to be a stronger business owner? Can you think of a couple things that you'd like to highlight for our audience?
Well, I think a lot of it can actually go into what we were talking about just a second ago, how to help yourself. Again, I just take it all away from people and from myself for that minute. Mm-hmm. I always tell people I'm Nico first, and then everything else underneath is following Nico. I'm Nico first. That means gay. That means biracial. That means entrepreneur. That means witch. That means whatever. All the way. That's all underneath Nico. Mm-hmm. So when I'm dealing with people, you don't understand how, well, you probably do because you're very, very enlightened, but a lot of people don't understand that there are people on all sides in all communities who just want to be able to have all of that stuff underneath their name taken off their shoulders for a second.
Yes.
And that's what I want to give to people. I want to give them that relief. So you're right. The pressures of gender normativity, heteronormativity, those should be taken off of straight people.
Yeah.
And they actually get relief from doing it. They actually are happy to do it. I think that the pressures of homonormativity, I'm happy when it's taken off of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to live that way either. I'm going to live my way. I'm not living the heteronormative way. I'm not going to go out and do that. And I'm not going to do what we consider to be homonormative. I'm going to be me. I took the pressure off of me. If you give people the freedom from the pressure to conform, to emulate, or assimilate, you reduce a lot of that pressure to prejudice.
Yeah.
Okay. You do. And I think that you've got a situation where, again, we as members of the LGBTQ community have all had the experience of having that pressure ripped off us before. Now, maybe it was taken off of us and then it got put back on. Maybe we moved to an area that made us feel like we had to, cloister up a little bit. Maybe the pressure got taken back off, but it got put back on when we went to the college or the job that we couldn't be out in, right? Maybe it got taken off and then got replaced with something else. Like I said, I'm not even a fan of homonormative pressures because to me, that's an arbitrary construct just as much as heteronormativity is an arbitrary construct. Mm-hmm. So I think that when we go into that discussion, tap into that part of you that really felt free to be who you are. And remember that everyone on some level is being denied that. Mm-hmm. Level your playing field. That's what we have the gift to do, because we already don't fit the nuclear family model, the by the way, which has only been around since the 50s. I mean, when I was like, people didn't even start living in single family homes as part of the mainstream until after World War II. What are these people thinking, talking about nuclear families, 2 partners, 2.5 kids and a dog? That's actually very, very modern.
Mm-hmm.
That's not tradition at all.
Right.
If you start to understand the psychology behind these things, if you start to understand the hype behind these things, the hype behind any of these normative cultures, you'll realize it's all fake. And when you get rid of that, you just give that person their name. Who are you after all of that is taken away? You are feeling so free. The pressure to perform, embellish, or exaggerate any of those qualities is gone. And you feel so grateful for that. And I think that we as LGBTQ people all have that.
Yeah. So
we've all had that experience, whether for an hour or for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And just to jump in, so as a superpower, like kind of what you're saying is because, for us, for those of us who have come out again and again and again, right, is just this idea of bucking societal norms or expectations. And by doing that at that moment, right, like suspending like homonormativity and other pressures that are then placed on us for different reasons, I guess like for stereotype threats and things like that. But basically that act allows us to then just lead with being truly ourselves, right? And in business, just allowing us to kind of bring our personality and center our business around who we are and trying to attract people that way. So is that kind of like a good summary, or did I get it right, or am I missing anything there?
Well, I think that if people will naturally want to talk to somebody that they know is real. Mm-hmm. Okay, now here's the thing. Real is, again, all of those things that make you who you are on the outside. Again, your ethnic background, political leaning, spiritual practice, your orientation, your gender identity, that's all external. That's not your soul. That's just, here we're going to get woo-woo for a second. That is the avatar or the character you made in this big Skyrim World of Warcraft game that is your life. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Okay? And you have fun playing that character. We all love being that character. Whoever we made, as long as we made the right one. Sometimes we don't know how to make the right one. We got to re-roll. But the thing is that if you can make that character still fun, but have that soul on the inside more important, we say having to come out again and again. I don't think I've come out to a person in a long time because I've always been out. Mm-hmm. To me, being gay is something I tell people it just serves to inform, the same way. I don't know if they have a picture of me. The same way if I have contacts or glasses in, just serves to inform about my eyesight. Right. The way my skin color, tone serves to inform that I'm biracial. The way my, all of that. Mm-hmm. It just serves to inform. It doesn't tell somebody how to treat me. I tell somebody how to treat me because, you know what? I will tolerate certain things and not tolerate certain things. The next gay guy or the next gay girl, or the next transgender, or even the next anyone, mm-hmm. even the next heterosexual person, I will tolerate and handle things differently.
Yeah.
I've got thicker skin in some areas. I've got higher tolerances for things than others. And so I'm the one who serves to inform. I don't want somebody to stop to change the way their tone, the way they speak to me because I'm gay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. Yeah. Just like I'm not going to change. I'm not going to censor myself for you if you're straight. I'm not going to censor myself for you if you're transgender, and you're not going to censor yourself for me, for identifying as a cisgender male. In this sense, if we can just stop doing that for a second and just talk soul to soul, then we'll attract people, that already work soul to soul, who want real. Mm-hmm. Not embellishments, not exaggerations, not exaggerated masculinity, exaggerated femininity, exaggerated, heteronormativity, exaggerated, LGBTQ identity, exaggerated this and that. If we can get away from that.
So wait, so
I found
I have
people.
a quick question for you, just on that, because I like this concept of realness, right? And so, or I'm putting quotes around that. So for our listeners, just to kind of like round out this section of the interview, like what are the things that you would want them to kind of take away from this aspect of the conversation, so that they can be, whether we're talking about more real or more authentic in their work, like just giving them some additional confidence on how to kind of take what you're sharing and apply it to their everyday work, whether they're working as entrepreneurs or, they're working for someone else on the way to becoming an entrepreneur.
I think that you have to know the difference between correct and right when it comes to your behavior and the choices that you make. The right thing and the correct thing are not always the same thing. Whether it's how you handle yourself, your business practice, or again, handling your LGBTQ identity. Correct is, again, that's part of that cultural agreement.
Yeah.
That standard of arrangements. What is correct is usually dictated by something that a lot of people will have a consensus reality about. I mean, yes, obviously there are some things that are correct because of facts, but when we talk about to do, the right thing to do and the correct thing to do are not always the same.
Mm-hmm.
The correct thing to do in a situation where, say, somebody has not paid me, the correct cookie cutter thing to do would be to plague them with invoices or possibly file a report. The right thing to do for me, okay, because the right thing is going to be in your heart, in your sense of goodness. The right thing to do might be to let it go. Let it be. I don't, I'll give that debt up and it'll be replaced by somebody else. The thing is, when it comes to your behavior, how you do your business practice and things like that, if you're more attached to correctness in any matter, social, personal, whatever, you're always doing what you think is going to work for other people. You're always doing what you think other people will praise you for. You're always doing what you think somebody who's watching you is going to give you a thumbs up for. And at the end of the day, that's about affirmation, validation, and approval. Do without. You're the only affirmation, validation, approval you need. The right thing is going to come from in your heart. So when we embellish, again, going back to the topic of exaggerated things, when talk about, say, like exaggerated masculinity, exaggerated femininity, no matter where you fall on any gender or orientation spectrum, when we exaggerate those things, we're doing what we think is correct. Or are we doing something that we think is right? If the way to tell the difference is, does it feel like you, like the you're going to be 24/7? If it is, then you're not exaggerating anything and you're doing the right thing. If it's something that you only do in the company of certain people, that you only do in the company or of maybe a certain audience, if it's something that you only do as this thing that you need to get the attention that you want, then you're doing the correct thing. It's correct for that role, but it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes great sense. And I love that question, just to throw it back out to the audience is, just does it feel right for you? So rather than performing for other people, trusting your intuition, trusting your heart and being yourself and, in an appropriate business way, right? I mean, there's a cultural agreement there. Right.
We're the bosses, though. We're the bosses, though. Don't we decide what professionalism is?
Yeah. I listen to a number of other entrepreneurial podcasts, and the topic of dress code comes up a lot, and it's just like we're creating our own, right? So yeah, I mean, but again, you're trusting your heart and you're being yourself, and I really like that question. So just if folks can remember that, does it feel right? Does it feel like you? And I think that's a good way to guide, how we operate in our businesses and in our lives. So thank you for that. Okay, so we are going to shift because we have a little bit of time left, and I had a bunch of other questions for you, so I'm going to have to bring you back on at some point because this is a really good conversation. So the first things first is that I want to say that we are going to go into our bonus round, and this is the Out Entrepreneur. Aspiring out bosses, are you struggling with taking that first entrepreneurial leap? Does the imposter syndrome prevent you from getting started? Have you considered seeking support, but you're just not sure where to turn? Look no further. The Out Entrepreneur now offers a coaching and mentorship program where you can access support and strategies to shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur. If you're looking for accountability and a mentor who successfully busted out of the 9-to-5 lifestyle, let's schedule a time to talk today. Visit www.outentrepreneur.com and look for show notes from today's episode to schedule a call. Again, the URL is www.outentrepreneur.com. Together, let's welcome you to the wonderful world of being an out boss. Right now, what we're going to do is ask Nico some questions that they're meant to be quick fire. So if you can answer them in a word, a phrase, a sentence at most, that would be great. And it's just going to allow us to get to know you better, Nico, and learn a little bit more about your business by the end of our conversation. So, okay, if you're feeling ready, the first bonus question is, do you have a mantra or a quote that you reference to help you stay motivated in your business, especially if you're encountering some kind of challenge or struggle?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, all right. This is really quick fire then. Okay.
Sheets of the wind.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so can you share one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
Oh, goodness. Well, my personal habit, I think, is to solve in the moment if you can, especially when it comes to people. Solve in the moment when you can. If there's a problem with an individual, talk it out. Not be afraid to talk it out. So many people are so afraid of conflict in business. They're so afraid to have a disagreement with a customer or client. They're so afraid to turn off a prospective collaborator. Talk it out. Don't be afraid to talk it out. If you can remember, here's your mantra. Remember every misunderstanding, everything that you're self-conscious about, everything that you're worried about doing wrong. If you're even insecure about something, it can be talked out. We can't be afraid of talking it out.
I love that. Solve in the moment if you can. And that's definitely, I think, in a culture, well, I'm talking from Portland, Seattle, so there's a culture of nice, right? And sometimes conflict is viewed as not nice. And I disagree with that. I think sometimes when there's a little bit of a rub, there's a way to move forward and deepen a relationship, whether that's a business relationship or any kind of a relationship in life. So I think that's really, really great advice. So thank you for that. Okay. So on the business side of things, what's one thing that you readily delegate at work in business to stay focused on what you're good at?
Well, I don't let my cats come on the desk. I'm alone, so delegating is not necessarily something that I always do very well.
Yeah. Yep.
I would say that one thing that I delegate really well when it comes to, I guess, handle it. I always make it a point to remind people of what I do, what my job is, and how I do it. I am flexible, but I also remind people that they're working with me. Right. And they're not working with the last person that they worked with, and that they're not working with they're not working with the commercial expectation, because again, I remember I delegate that I am to be treated as an individual. In the same way you would look at like a graphic designer, or an illustrator. Everyone's got a bit of their own edge to it. You have to delegate that people look at that edge and that difference in your style. They don't have to like it.
Yeah.
They just have to know it's there and not ask for you to be anything else.
Yeah. And maybe a little bit around that is just boundaries as well. You're doing kind of the solopreneur thing, and there's a limit of you and a limit of your time, right? So, so thank you for that. Do you have a book or a podcast that's helped, kind of give you the crash course of running a business, or that helped you just kind of stay excited and inspired by what you do?
The short answer is no, I suppose. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not necessarily easy to inspire in that way. Not to say I'm like this gloomy, drab person, but I don't get built up the same way. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
I don't get built up the same way. Funny enough, nothing makes me feel more indifferent to something than having a cheerleader, or a spokesperson or a hype guy. And so I guess that for me, what inspires me to do it's I have role models. I'll put it that way. I have role models that I like. And a lot of those role models are, sometimes they're witches. Sometimes they're not sometimes they're not spiritual. Sometimes they're not doing horoscopes. I do have role models that a lot of my role models for doing this actually are huge nerds, and they're doing these big lore talks on like Lord of the Rings and World of Warcraft and things like that. And just seeing people, again, who are taking the nerdiest part of themselves The part of them that probably got them made fun of in middle school, the part of them that probably made them feel like they were on the outside looking in. Again, a lot of us LGBTQ people can relate to that. The part of them that made them weird and different becomes their greatest strength. And some of them have 10 times the amount of subscribers as me. They're making money off of providing no service whatsoever than just producing videos.
Yeah.
I guess that's my inspiration. Just be weird.
Yeah.
Someone from Portland can appreciate that.
I love that. Be weird. And find the nerdiest stuff that lights you up, right? And maybe I should add YouTube channel in there, because there's so many awesome, inspiring YouTube channels that are out there, including yours. So so a couple more questions, just two. This one is, can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of LGBT entrepreneurs to take that first step?
My piece of advice would be that you need to, again, know that you're going to be interested in the service. You have to love the service you're providing more than anything else, more than the result. Okay. You need to love the service you're providing. Don't go and be an entrepreneur because you want to see a reaction in another person, whether it's fame, whether it's fortune. Now, it's okay. You just got to own what you're doing. Love and own what you're doing. I've seen so many people and done so many readings and consultations with people who their passion was the money, their passion was the lifestyle, and they were so afraid to admit it that they didn't run their business very well because they were pretending they were in love with something they weren't. They were in a bad marriage with their business. Yeah. And if you just own what you love, even if you're in love with money, even if you're in love with the result, don't pretend you're in love with something else. It's not my goal. It's not my aim. Everything that's happened to me has been, just a result of me being authentic and me being real and loving my craft and me living this every day. If you love money, if you like nice things, if you like fame, that's great. If you love music, it's got to be about the music. If you love art, it's got to be about the art. If you love architecture or graphic design, it's got to be about that. And again, if you just are interested in becoming a wealthy person and you're really passionate about that, own it.
Yeah, I love that.
Don't hide it. Don't be in a bad marriage with the business.
I love that. Just kind of the phrase, love and own what you're doing. And I think that's a great piece to end on. So Nico, I want to thank you so much for your time and for inspiring fellow outbosses. So before we go, can you tell us where we can learn more about you and Scarlet Moon and Integrative Mysticism?
I've got 2 YouTube channels. My big main page, my working page, it's just Scarlet Moon on YouTube. You can just type in Scarlet Moon Tarot or Scarlet Moon Astrology on the YouTube search bar and you'll find it there. And so I do weekly horoscopes, astrology, and tarot, and then I do monthly astrology horoscopes there as well. I've got a smaller vlog, which you can learn a little bit more about me and more of my witchier sort of Scarlet Moon after dark kind of talks. It's Scarlet Moon Magic, all one word. Cool. And that's all on YouTube as well. And then my website is integrativemysticism.com. That's where people can go to schedule an appointment with me, see all the classes and consultations I've got going on. I do teach tarot. I do teach astrology. March and August tend to be my classroom months, though 2018, I'm probably going to be pushing the classroom in the spring to late April. So that'll be something a lot of people want to pay attention to. I do classes in astrology, do webinars and things like that. And of course, just don't be afraid to check out the Scarlet Moon Facebook page. And then, there's all kinds of little updates and blurbs that I'll throw up in there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nico. This has been a really, really awesome conversation. And for Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring Outbosses like Nico. For details from today's conversation, to find out everything about Scarlet Moon and integrativemysticism.com, check out the show notes at www.outentrepreneur.com. As a next step, subscribe to the podcast, consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes, and be sure to share with a friend or a loved one. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.